My sister took my inheritance to fund her dream wedding. Now she wants me to pay her rent. My sister Amber was the sun in our family universe. Bright, demanding, impossible to ignore, and like the sun, she burned everything in her path, especially me. We grew up in a modest house on the corner of Maple Street, the kind with creaky floors, floral wallpaper, and a porch swing that leaned slightly to the left. It smelled like cinnamon in the winter and cut grass in the summer. Our parents, both schoolteachers, weren't rich, but they were proud, and they were hopelessly, absolutely, obsessively devoted to their youngest child, Amber. She was the kind of kid who could break a vase and somehow get a hug out of it, who cried when she lost a board game and was declared the winner anyway, who always got the last piece of cake, the window seat on road trips, the bigger stocking at Christmas. I was 2 years older and invisible by comparison. Quiet, responsible, not the type to make a fuss, which only made it easier for everyone to ignore me. There was one moment that stuck with me though. I was 10, Amber 8. I had saved up my allowance for months to buy a used tablet, nothing fancy but mine. I treasured it. Amber asked to borrow it one afternoon. I hesitated, and she pouted. "Come on, Ron," she said, batting her eyelashes. "Just for a minute?" An hour later I found it cracked and soaking wet on the bathroom floor. She shrugged. "It fell," she said. "Oops." I was devastated. I told Mom, I told Dad. I even showed them the screen, spiderwebbed, water damage creeping up like mold. But all Mom said was, "Sweetheart, she didn't mean to. Don't make a big deal." And the next day, they bought her a brand new tablet. To make her feel better, they said. Mine wasn't replaced. That was when I learned Amber's tears weighed more than my silence. From then on, I stopped asking. I mowed lawns in the summer, shoveled snow in the winter, and saved every penny. I bought my own school supplies, fixed my own bike, packed my own lunches. I was 12 when I realized I'd have to earn everything on my own. Mom used to tell me, "You're the strong one, Ron, you don't need as much as she does." Dad never disagreed. It was easier that way. I watched Amber grow into her role, the star, the performer, the eternal favorite. She always got what she wanted because she knew how to make noise. I got what I needed because I knew how to shut up and endure. By the time we were adults, the pattern was set. Amber expected the world to bend for her, and I quietly moved out of its way. I made peace with it eventually. Family isn't about fairness, it's about who cries the loudest. The law office smelled like burnt coffee and old paper. Everything in it felt gray. The walls, the carpet, even the overpolished furniture that looked like it belonged in a funeral home. I sat across from Mr. Hale, my parents' longtime attorney. He was a man of few words, with thinning hair and eyes that flickered with discomfort every time he glanced at me. To his right sat Amber, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. Not because she was grieving, not really, but because it suited the moment. Our parents had died 3 weeks earlier. A car accident on the way home from a weekend trip. No long goodbye, no hospital vigil, just a phone call in the middle of the night and the world cracking open like a dropped plate. I'd handled the logistics. Amber had handled the dramatics. Now, here we were, the reading of the will, the final judgment. Mr. Hale cleared his throat and began, "As per the last will and testament of Richard and Diane Matthews." He started with Amber. "To our beloved daughter Amber," he read, "we leave the family home, our savings account in full, the Subaru Outback, and all proceeds from our life insurance policies." Amber gasped. "Oh my God," she whispered, "this changes everything. I can finally have the wedding I've always wanted." She clutched her chest like it was a scene from a soap opera. I stared straight ahead. Mr. Hale turned to me. "To our son Ronald." He paused. His mouth twitched like he was about to apologize but decided against it. "We leave the contents of Richard's study, including the bookshelf and personal effects, along with his tool collection in the garage, and a one-time sum of $5,000. I blinked. That was it. No house, no car, no mention of fairness or equality, just Dad's dusty books and a few aging hammers. Mr. Hale slid 2 envelopes across the table, one for each of us. Personal letters from our parents. Amber ripped hers open immediately. I held mine like it was made of glass. Her eyes scanned the page, then lit up. "They said I was always their little princess," she beamed. "They knew I'd make something special of this gift. They believed in my future." I opened mine more slowly. The handwriting was familiar. My father's blocky letters, my mother's flowing script in the margins. Ron, we know this might come as a shock. But you're strong. You've always been strong. You don't need help like Amber does. She's about to start a new life, a wedding, a home, a future. We trust that you'll understand. You're the man of the family now. I read the words 3 times. They didn't sting, not exactly. They just confirmed something I'd already known for years. Amber gets everything. I get to pretend it doesn't bother me. Ron, Amber said, wiping a fake tear. Can you believe it? A real wedding. I'm going to look like a princess, just like Mom always said I would. I didn't respond. I stood, folded the letter and slid it into my coat pocket. Mr. Hale mumbled something about paperwork. Amber was already scrolling through Pinterest on her phone. I left the office without saying goodbye. There was nothing to fight for. I'd spent my entire life being the quiet one, and no one hears the quiet one when the golden child is singing. I didn't go to the wedding. I got the invitation, of course. A gold embossed card inside a satin envelope, sealed with wax and smelling like overpriced perfume. It arrived 2 months after the reading of the will, along with a handwritten note from Amber that read, I know Mom and Dad would have wanted you there. After all, none of this would be possible without them. Love, Amber. I tossed the card into a drawer and forgot about it. But the internet didn't let me ignore the wedding. The day of the ceremony, my feed exploded. Amber's Instagram story looked like a Disney movie on steroids. A sprawling white mansion rented for the weekend, draped in silk and orchids. A white horse-drawn carriage pulled her to the entrance while a string quartet played a slow-motion version of some top 40 hit. Everything sparkled. Her $12,000 dress, the crystal chandeliers, the ice sculpture shaped like a swan. Even the cake had its own hashtag. There were drone shots, fireworks, a hot air balloon that lifted her and her new husband into the sky at sunset, only for 10 minutes, but just enough to make it to every influencer's highlight reel. I watched it all in silence from my tiny apartment. Zach, the groom, waved from the balloon like he was some kind of prince. He was wearing a tailored tux that I'd bet good money he didn't pay for. I'd met him twice. The kind of guy who called himself an entrepreneur, but the only thing he seemed to hustle was Amber's wallet. Every comment under her posts was pure sugar. You're the most beautiful bride. Your parents must be so proud in heaven. This is the kind of wedding every girl dreams of. And then came the one that hit me like a slap. Thank you, Mom and Dad. You gave me the fairy tale I always dreamed of. I hope you're watching. I stared at the caption, then at the image, Amber in her white dress, smiling against a backdrop of sparklers, with Zach grinning like he just won the lottery. Which, in a way, he had. I closed the app. They didn't give her a fairy tale, they gave her my share of reality. But fine. Let her have her dream, let her fly in balloons and dance in rented castles. Fairy tales burn out eventually, and I'd been living in reality my whole life. 10 months. That's how long the fairy tale lasted. I hadn't heard much from Amber since the wedding, which suited me just fine. Every now and then I'd see a new post, champagne brunches, luxury handbags, selfies in front of sunset views from their high-rise apartment downtown. Rent there ran close to $3,800 a month, but of course, they didn't worry about things like budgets. Not when they had an inheritance to burn through. The call came on a Tuesday. I was in my garage, fixing a cabinet door that had come off its hinge. My phone lit up, and for a second, I considered ignoring it. But curiosity won. Ron? Her voice was soft, sweet, that tone she used when she wanted something. Amber, I said, not offering more. She hesitated, then launched in. So, Zach and I, we're in a bit of a transitional phase. He's launching something big. A startup. Honestly, it's genius. But in the meantime, we're just between things. Temporarily. I waited. I already knew where this was going. I was wondering, she continued, if maybe you could help out? Just for a couple of months. Just until we stabilize. I mean, it's family, right? How much are we talking? I asked, keeping my voice flat. Oh, not much. Just around $7,000. It would cover rent and basics while Zach closes this deal. It's going to blow up, Ron. We just need a little runway. $7,000. That was more than I usually spent in a year on vacations, car repairs, and emergencies combined. Amber, I said calmly, I can't help you. There was a pause. Can't or won't? Does it matter? Another pause. Sharper this time. Wow, I just thought, family is supposed to be support. I would have given everything for you. I didn't laugh, but it took effort. You already did, Amber. You just gave it to yourself. Click. That was the last time I heard her voice for a while. No more calls, no more texts, not even a passive-aggressive meme in my DMs. Just silence. It was peaceful and loud in its own way. It had been weeks since I heard from Amber, but then she called again. Not for money, not for a handout. This time she wanted to meet. I didn't expect much from it. I'd seen this show before. The rehearsed charm, the manipulative smile, the way she could turn any conversation into a reflection of her needs. But for some reason I agreed. Maybe I was tired of running from the truth. Maybe I just wanted to get it all out. We met at a small cafe, one of those trendy spots in the middle of the city, where the decor was intentionally minimal and the coffee cost $10. Amber walked in with her usual flair, perfectly done hair, that perfect shade of lipstick, and a fake warmth in her eyes that made her look like she could sell ice to an Eskimo. She sat across from me, a carefully curated pout on her face. I'm glad we could finally talk, she said, leaning forward. I thought maybe you'd understand by now. I've been patient, but we both know you're holding on to something, and it's just petty at this point. I let out a breath, slowly. Petty? Yes, she continued, her voice dripping with condescension. You've always been bitter, Ron. You were always the responsible one, the boring one. You know, Mom and Dad, they always said you didn't have the same fire. You didn't want the same things. And deep down you've always envied me. I felt my face twitch at the familiar words. Envied you? I repeated, leaning back in my chair, keeping my voice calm. You think I envied you? You mean because you were always the favorite? The one who could get away with anything? The one who took what she wanted, no matter who it hurt? Amber's eyes narrowed, but she pressed on. Exactly. You've always been too safe, too boring. I lived my life, I had dreams. And now you're just angry that I made them happen. Don't act like you're not jealous. That's when I felt the walls inside me start to crack. The years of silence, of swallowing my pride, it all started to boil up, and this time I wasn't going to hold back. No, Amber, I said, my voice rising. You didn't make it happen. You spent everything they gave you, everything I was denied, and now you want more. But it's never enough, is it? Her face turned sharp, but I didn't stop. I was 14 when I started working at that damn warehouse. I worked every summer, every weekend, to make sure I had something for myself. I sacrificed, Amber. I cried when I realized that, while you were getting everything handed to you, I had to build everything from the ground up. And when they died, they left me nothing but a stack of books and some old tools. Amber's eyes softened for a second, just a flash, but it quickly vanished. She opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off. You know what? You took everything I had in the inheritance. And I didn't argue. I walked away. But I'm not going to let you walk all over me again. I've been patient, I've been polite. But this is the last time. I slammed my hand on the table, and she flinched. I've saved everything that was taken from me, and I won't give you any more. You've already spent everything you were given, and now you want to take more? No. Her face went pale. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. I'm done, I said, my voice steady now. I'm not your safety net, Amber, and I'm not going to keep fixing your messes. I'm not your backup plan. With that, I stood up, ready to walk out. Her chair scraped against the floor as she stood too. You're so selfish, she spat, her face flushed with anger. I can't believe you would do this. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. She turned on her heel, walked out of the cafe, and slammed the door behind her. I watched her go, her perfect little world falling apart just as fast as it had been built. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally free. The first post appeared on Facebook late that evening. Family turns their back when you need them most. The betrayal from the people closest to you is always the hardest to take. I thought I had a brother who would be there for me when everything fell apart. But I was wrong. It was from Amber. I stared at the screen for a long time, my mind reeling. I could almost hear her voice in my head as I read her words, dripping with the same manipulation that had been a constant throughout our lives. I had known she'd turn this into a war, but seeing it so clearly laid out in front of me was still a shock. Amber was painting herself as the victim, the helpless one who just wanted a little support. a little kindness from her selfish brother. Meanwhile, I was the villain, the one who had cut ties, refused to help, and cast her aside when she needed me the most. I wasn't surprised, of course. This was her go-to move. It was always about turning the tables, making everyone feel sorry for her, while she could continue her life without a care for the damage she caused. I scrolled down, my thumb slowing as I read more of her posts. My dream wedding? Ruined. I had to pay for everything on my own because my brother couldn't even spare a dime to support me. Family is everything, and yet he couldn't even be there. I knew I had to say something. I couldn't let this narrative take root. So I posted my own response. Amber, I gave you everything I could. You've taken from me for years and I've never complained. But I won't be your financial backup anymore. You made your choices, and now you're trying to paint me as the bad guy for refusing to be your personal ATM. I'm done. The reactions started flooding in immediately. Some were from distant relatives, others from her friends. A few of them didn't even know the full story but were eager to jump on the bandwagon. Ron's being unreasonable, one comment read. Family is family, you shouldn't just shut her out like that. I sighed, shaking my head. These were the same relatives who had always excused Amber's behavior. The same people who had been silent when I was the one left holding the bag, year after year. Then came the phone calls. Ronan, honey, it's Aunt Margie, came the voice at the other end of the line. You know Amber is going through a hard time right now. She's your sister. You can't just leave her hanging like this. I didn't even flinch. Aunt Margie, I replied, calm but firm, I'm done being the family's backup plan. She used everything I had left, emotionally, financially. I'm not her donor anymore. I'm not anyone's donor. She was silent for a moment, but I could hear the hesitation in her voice when she finally spoke again. I just don't understand, Ron. She's family. I'm family too, Aunt Margie, I cut in. But I've been invisible my whole life. I'm tired of being the one who has to fix everything. I'm not her fall guy anymore. She's had enough chances. Another call came in shortly after. This time it was my cousin Jason, his voice tight with concern. Dude, I get it, but Amber's your sister. You can't just turn your back on her. You're making her out to be the villain in all this. Is it really worth it? I didn't hold back. Jason, you've never had to live in her shadow. You don't know what it's like. She's always taken, always expected more. I'm done. I can't keep giving just because it's expected. Jason sighed. You've always been the rock, Ron. I just don't want to see you go down this path. I closed my eyes, letting out a deep breath. I've spent my whole life doing what others expected of me, but not anymore. I'm done. It's her turn to take responsibility for her choices. The calls kept coming. The messages kept piling up. It felt like the whole family was on Amber's side, even though no one had ever really seen what she was doing to me behind closed doors. But for the first time in my life, I felt free. Free from the expectation to be the good brother, the nice guy who never says no. Free from the guilt that had been hanging over me for as long as I could remember. I didn't owe them anything anymore, not Amber, not Aunt Margie, not anyone. And that was the most liberating feeling I'd ever had. The quiet of my apartment was comforting. The smell of coffee mixed with the faint scent of old books, the soft hum of my dog's breathing as he lay on the rug. It was the perfect escape from the chaos I'd lived through. I had my peace now, and for the first time in years I felt something close to contentment. There were no demands on me, no one expecting me to fix things, to bail someone out, or to shoulder the weight of a family that never truly saw me. I had the freedom to be myself, to live without constantly feeling like I was being used. It had been 6 months since the last call from Amber. 6 months since she'd moved out of the luxury apartment, her life now a far cry from the fairy tale she'd tried to sell to the world. I'd heard through family that she'd taken up work in a nail salon, her high-flying dreams now grounded in reality. Zach was gone. I hadn't been surprised. They'd never really been a team. He had always been more interested in the idea of her wealth than in actually building something with her. He wasn't even around when Amber tried reaching out again. I was sitting on my couch, flipping through one of my father's old books, when my phone buzzed. A voice message from Amber. I hesitated for a moment, the weight of what had happened still fresh in my mind. But I played it anyway. Ron, I know I messed up. I was stupid. I ruined everything. But if you can find it in yourself to help me out, just this once. I can't keep up with the mortgage on my own, just for this month. I'll figure it out after, I swear. The words hung in the air like a heavy fog. She sounded tired. I could hear the desperation, the thin veil of pride just barely holding up her voice. But no matter how many times I heard that tone, I couldn't bring myself to feel sympathy. I stared at the screen for a moment. The old familiar tug of obligation gnawed at me, but I pushed it aside. I didn't reply. Instead, I deleted the message. No anger, no resentment, just nothing. I wasn't angry with her. I wasn't even disappointed. I was just done. For years, I had been the one who was expected to fix things, to clean up her mess, to fill in the gaps. But I wasn't that person anymore. I had my own life now, my own space, and I had earned it. They always told me I was strong enough to do it on my own, I thought, as I set my phone aside. They were right. Just not in the way they expected.
My wife ran away with my boss. Now she's begging me to raise their baby. It's funny how one sentence can detonate your whole life. You think you're building something stable, a home, a routine, a future, and then, boom. One note, 6 lines, and everything comes crashing down. I found it on the kitchen counter. She hadn't even tried to hide it. Just a plain white envelope with my name in her handwriting, the same handwriting that once scribbled "I love you" on napkins and birthday cards. "Harry, I'm sorry. I love someone else. It's Ron. I hope someday you'll understand. Melissa." I stood there for what felt like forever, holding the note like it might change if I looked long enough. But it didn't, and neither did the silence around me. The house was too quiet. No hum of her favorite podcast in the background, no sound of the kettle boiling, no smell of her perfume clinging to the air. Just coffee gone cold in the pot, and her favorite mug still sitting in the sink. But her clothes? Gone. Her shoes? Gone. Half the closet, empty. Like someone had scooped out the center of my life and left the shell. I sat down in our chair, the one we fought over at IKEA, and then both loved once it broke in just right. I didn't move for hours, didn't cry, didn't scream, just sat. Like if I stayed still enough, the world might rewind. That's when the memory hit me. That damn barbecue. It was late summer, and Ron had come over with steaks and his signature bourbon grin. Melissa laughed at everything he said. I mean everything. I chalked it up to her being polite. She was always gracious, always charming. But I remember how her hand lingered on his shoulder a beat too long when she passed him a drink. How she laughed, just a little louder at his stupid jokes. I ignored it. I trusted them. Hell, I liked Ron. He was my boss, yeah, but more than that. He was like an older brother. Took me under his wing when I joined the firm. Gave me good projects. Vouched for me with the partners. I thought he respected me. Now I realize he was laying the groundwork the whole damn time. I leaned forward in the chair, elbows on knees, the note still clutched in my fist. My wedding ring felt heavier than ever. I didn't understand then. Not really. I thought maybe she was going through something. Maybe it was a phase. Maybe she'd come back. I was wrong about that too. But I wasn't wrong about one thing. That day, sitting in the hollow of our home, I knew something in me had shifted. The Harry who believed in happy endings? He left that day too. The Monday after Melissa left, I got fired. No long conversation, no real explanation, just a tight-lipped HR rep and a "this isn't performance-related, but" speech. Ron, of course, didn't even have the guts to face me. The man who stole my wife couldn't even look me in the eye. I left the office with a cardboard box and the realization that everything I built in the last 10 years was officially gone. They didn't even let me finish my coffee. I moved into a 1-bedroom in a part of town where sirens outnumber birdsong. The paint peeled in the corners. The heater rattled like it was coughing up its last breath. But it was cheap, and no one asked questions, and that's all I could afford. Some nights I lay awake listening to arguments through the thin walls. Others I drank enough that sleep came like a brick to the head. I picked up work delivering takeout. Not because I liked it, I hated it, but because it was the only thing that didn't ask me to smile or care. Just pick up the food, drop it at the door, repeat. My parents called. I let it ring. My college friend Jake texted. I deleted it. I didn't want to talk to anyone who still had a full life, who hadn't been gutted by betrayal and left to rot. My beard grew in patches. I shaved when the mirror disgusted me too much. I showered most days. I drank too much. Cheap beer, always. I told myself it helped me sleep, but really, it helped me forget. Just a little. One night, I was digging through a box I'd never unpacked. Inside, photos, notes, a damn scrapbook from our honeymoon in Oregon. Melissa had written in big loopy cursive on the front, and the start of forever. I tore out the first few pages. Our stupid smiling faces on the beach, the pressed flower she'd saved from the trail, the love note she'd slipped under my pillow. I ripped and ripped and ripped. Then I stopped. Not everything. I don't know why. I left a few photos, just tossed the rest back in the box and shoved it under the bed like it might crawl away on its own. Later that night, I took the trash out and ran into my neighbor, an old guy named Walter who lived 2 doors down. Gray hair, thick glasses, moved slow. "You just move in?" he asked, eyes squinting in the dark. "Divorce?" he asked casually, as if talking about the weather. I hesitated. "Something like that." He nodded. "Same here. 40 years ago." I didn't say anything. He didn't press. Just offered me a half smile and said, "Well, hang in there. It won't always feel like this." That night, for the first time in weeks, I didn't drink. I sat on the broken couch, looked around the empty apartment and whispered to no one. One day, I won't feel like a ghost in my own life. And somehow, that felt like something. It was a Tuesday evening in late October, the kind of night where the rain doesn't fall. It clings, soft and cold, like regret you can't shake off. I was halfway through reheating a can of soup when I heard the knock, not the sharp kind, soft, hesitant, like the person on the other side wasn't sure if they had the right door, or the right to knock at all. When I opened it, the world tilted. There she was, Melissa, hair damp from the rain, stringy and pulled back, no makeup, eyes puffy, skin pale, a dark bruise like exhaustion under both eyes. The confident, glowing woman I once married was gone. In her place was someone who looked like she'd lost more than just a home. In her shaking hands was a baby carrier. Inside, a tiny bundle, wrapped in a green blanket, sleeping. I didn't say a word. Neither did she. Her lips trembled before she finally whispered, "Harry, I didn't know where else to go." I stared at her, at the carrier. My pulse beat in my throat. My mind screamed no. My heart, it didn't know what the hell it wanted anymore. "Just one night," she said. Her voice cracked. "Please, just for tonight. Not for her, never again for her, for the baby." She walked in slowly, like she half expected the floor to give way. She set the carrier gently on the old couch, looked around the tiny space, and said nothing else. Just sat down beside the carrier and unzipped her coat. The baby stirred but didn't wake. I didn't ask his name. I didn't ask anything. Instead, I watched. She looked smaller somehow, fragile. Her hands trembled as she reached in and touched the baby's cheek. The old wedding band she used to wear was gone. I stayed standing for a long time, arms crossed. Eventually, I moved to the armchair across the room, sat down and kept my eyes on them. On him. I didn't hold him. Couldn't. Wouldn't. But I couldn't stop looking either. He was small, soft, curled like a question mark. He had a little tuft of dark hair, the same shade as mine. No. Don't do that, I told myself. Don't even go there. Melissa didn't talk. She just sat with the baby on her chest, wrapped in her arms, and slowly drifted into sleep. I stayed awake, listening to the rain, to the baby's soft breaths, to the ache in my chest that pulsed with every second. She set fire to my life. Now she wants shelter from the cold? I should have slammed the door in her face, told her to go to Ron, told her to rot like she left me to. But I didn't, because in that moment, the baby shifted in her arms, yawned, and made a tiny sound that broke me open in a place I didn't know still existed. I sat in that chair all night, watching the ghost I'd buried come back to life, and I didn't sleep. The morning after she returned, the rain had stopped, but everything still felt soaked through, the air, my clothes, my bones. Melissa stood in the kitchen in silence, awkwardly boiling water in a dented kettle I'd gotten from a thrift store. Her eyes were red-rimmed. She didn't look at me. I didn't look at her. The baby, Sammy, I heard her whisper the name once, lay curled on a folded towel on the couch, his little chest rising and falling in a rhythm too perfect for this messy, broken moment. I sat across the room, pretending to scroll through my phone, but really, I was just watching him. At one point he stirred, opened his eyes, big, hazel eyes, and started to fuss. Not a full cry, just a soft, almost embarrassed whimper, like even his sadness was polite. Melissa walked over and lifted him, but her hands trembled. After a few tries, he calmed down against her shoulder. She didn't coo, didn't sing, just held him. She wasn't pretending to be a perfect mother. And for some reason, that made it harder to hate her. Around noon, she finally spoke. "I was 6 months pregnant when he left," she said quietly. Her voice didn't carry. It barely reached across the room. Told me he had a fresh start waiting for him in Austin. Some younger assistant. I didn't respond. She kept going, bit by bit. Like peeling back skin from a burn. "Oh, Bond, hey, took the joint account. Cancelled the card I was using, took the car. Even my phone plan." I looked at her, just once. Her chin quivered, but she didn't cry. "I thought he was a better man," she said. Still, no excuses. No, I made a mistake. No, I'm sorry. Just facts laid bare. I stood, grabbed the trash bag from under the sink, and took it outside. The dumpster behind the building was overflowing. A cat darted from underneath as I approached. I threw the bag in, but something stopped me from walking away. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the folded note, the one she left on the kitchen table the day she ran off. "I'm sorry, Harry. I love someone else. It's Ron. I hope someday you'll understand." I stared at it for a long second, then I ripped it in half. Then again, and I threw the pieces into the garbage. That chapter was over. When I came back inside, the apartment smelled like old coffee and diapers. Melissa was asleep on the couch again, the baby lying beside her, wrapped in that same green blanket. He stirred when I got close, let out a soft noise, not a cry, just a sound I didn't think. I knelt beside the couch, reached out and let my finger hover near his hand. He grabbed it. His tiny fingers were warm, stronger than I expected. I looked into his eyes, big, curious, wordless. He didn't know the mess he came from. He didn't ask to be born in the middle of betrayal, or pain, or failed promises. He just was. I slipped my hands beneath him and lifted him, slowly. He didn't fight. He just blinked up at me like I was the sky. For a moment the world went quiet. I held him to my chest, one hand behind his head, the other across his back. His warmth soaked into my skin, down into something deeper. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something other than anger. I didn't say a word, but I didn't need to. We just looked at each other, and I didn't let go. 2 weeks after she showed up with the baby, I sat in a sterile clinic with a cotton swab in my mouth, pretending this wasn't a betrayal of my own conflicted feelings. The nurse didn't ask questions. She just labeled the vial, sealed it in a small plastic bag, and told me, "Results in 5 to 7 business days." I didn't tell Melissa. Not because I wanted to catch her in some kind of lie. I already knew the answer in my gut, but something inside me needed the truth spelled out in cold, sterile facts. No emotions, just DNA. When the email finally came, I didn't open it right away. I let it sit there, unread, while I finished a delivery shift and drove across town to meet Derek at Juno's, the dive bar we used to hit after long shifts back in the day. He was already 2 drinks in by the time I got there. "That woman's got balls coming back," he said without even looking up from his glass. "No offense." "None taken," I muttered, sliding onto the stool beside him. "She's still sleeping on your couch?" I nodded. He shook his head and laughed, not the funny kind. "Unreal. We ordered 2 beers. He didn't ask about the test, but I told him anyway. Pulled up the email and let him read it over my shoulder. "Probability of paternity, 0.0%. That's a hard number," he said softly now. "Not much to argue with." "Nope." He took a sip. "So what now? You gonna tell her to pack up?" I didn't answer. He turned to face me fully. "Harry, you're not his blood man. You owe them nothing. She cheated, she lied, she left, and he's a baby, Derek," I cut in, sharper than I meant to. Derek paused, nodded once. "Yeah, he is. He didn't ask for any of this. But still, You gotta ask yourself something. What's that? He looked me dead in the eye. Are you trying to be his father out of guilt, or because you've already become one? That question followed me home. The apartment was dark. Melissa had finally moved into the bedroom. I had offered it after she with a stiff neck 3 mornings in a row. I stayed on the couch. I lay there for hours, staring at the ceiling, listening. At around 2:30 a.m. the soft whimpering started, then built into cries. I waited. Melissa didn't stir. Maybe she was exhausted. Maybe she was pretending. Either way, I stood, made my way to the crib we'd pieced together from Facebook Marketplace finds and cheap screws. Sammy's face was red, scrunched tight with distress, little fists punching at the air like he was fighting off bad dreams. "Shh," I whispered, lifting him gently. "It's all right, kid. You're not alone." He settled into my chest, warm and real. I sat in the armchair, rocking him back and forth, slow and steady. He wasn't my son, but my arms didn't care, and neither did my heart. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. No TV, no music, no hum of the microwave or clinking of dishes. Just the soft rustling of the rain tapping against the windows, and the occasional creak of the old floorboards beneath our feet. Melissa sat at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a chipped mug of tea she hadn't touched. Her hair was pulled back, dark circles under her eyes. She looked like a ghost of the woman I married and the stranger who left me. I stood across from her, arms crossed, heart racing but my voice calm. "I know," I said. She blinked. "Know what?" I held her gaze. "That Sammy's not mine." Her eyes fell. No denial, no surprise. Only a slow exhale, and then, "I figured you did. I got the test last week. DNA doesn't lie." She nodded, and for a few seconds I thought I might walk away, leave it at that. But the storm in my chest demanded air. "You destroyed me, Melissa." She looked up, tears brimming, but she didn't interrupt. "You didn't just cheat. You didn't just fall in love with someone else. You walked out. You left me with nothing. Not even a conversation. Just a damn note." She flinched. "I didn't care. You humiliated me. I lost my job because I couldn't face him. Your lover, my boss. I lost friends. I lost myself." A tear rolled down her cheek. Still, she didn't speak. "I hated you," I said quietly. "And worse, I hated me. For not seeing it, for not being enough." Her voice finally cracked. "I know. I deserve every word." I let the silence hang between us like a rope. Then I said, "The only reason you're still here is because of him, not you." She looked over at the playpen in the corner where Sammy was napping peacefully. His tiny chest rose and fell with that innocent rhythm only babies seem to have. Melissa wiped her face with the sleeve of her sweater. "If you want me gone," she said, "I'll go." I stayed quiet. "I mean it," she whispered. "I'll leave. And if you think you can give Sammy what I can't, the stability, the care, the peace, I'll sign whatever you want. I just want him safe, and loved, and better than me." I didn't respond. Couldn't. Because for the first time since she walked back into my life, she wasn't asking for forgiveness. She was offering surrender. And that was almost harder to watch than the betrayal. It's been 6 months. The apartment is different now. It's brighter. The walls are freshly painted, a soft shade of blue that feels peaceful. There are toys scattered around, a colorful rug in the living room, and a few framed photos of Sammy and me on the walls. The small kitchen smells like fresh coffee and pancakes, the way mornings should feel. I don't look back at the apartment I used to live in with Melissa. I don't think I ever will. I'm sitting at the kitchen table, sipping my coffee, while Sammy crawls across the floor, his little hands grasping at the carpet. He's getting bigger, stronger, and sometimes when I look at him, I still see the ghost of the boy I thought wasn't mine. But I know better now. I'm his father, whether or not our blood runs the same. Melissa? She's out of the picture in a way. She's living in another town, visiting every now and then. She's trying, in her own broken way. I can't say I've forgiven her, but I've moved past it. I've learned to take responsibility for what's mine, and Sammy's mine. I've got a small repair company now. It's not much, but it's mine. I fix things, rebuild them. In a way, it's symbolic. People trust me to do a good job, and I'm good at it. Clients appreciate me. There's no rush, no chaos anymore. Just steady work and honest pay. I'm not the man I was 6 months ago. I don't have the same self-doubt or regret that weighed me down. I'm stronger now. And I've learned that being a man doesn't mean being perfect. It means showing up, every day. The morning light is pouring through the windows as Sammy pulls himself up on the couch. He's still wobbly, but there's determination in his eyes. He lets go of the cushion and takes a hesitant step. Then another. I put my mug down and lean forward, my heart catching in my throat. He takes another step. "Come on, buddy," I whisper, my voice barely audible. And then, with a soft thud, he falls onto his little bottom. He looks up at me, grinning like he just conquered the world. I laugh, scooping him up into my arms. "You're not my blood," I whisper to him as I hold him close. "But you're my boy, and I'll never run. The world outside might be unpredictable, but in this moment, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, and I know, for the first time in a long while, I've finally found what matters."
She left me for my brother because she thought he'd inherit everything. She was wrong. There's a certain kind of silence in a house that used to be filled with laughter. It's not peaceful. It's the kind that buzzes in your ears, like your body knows something's gone terribly wrong but hasn't told your brain yet. I'm Michael Carlisle, 38 years old, COO of Carlisle & Sons, a third-generation logistics firm that's built more warehouses than I've had birthdays. I live in a house we bought 6 years ago, right after my wife, Sarah, said yes to forever. She picked the place, said it had character. It did. Hardwood floors that creaked like old men, windows that rattled in the wind. It was charming in a tired kind of way, like both of us eventually. Back then, Sarah was electric, the kind of woman who could walk into a room and make gravity tilt slightly in her direction. People noticed her, the way she laughed with her whole mouth, how her eyes sparkled when she was planning something. Ambition practically leaked from her pores. I loved that about her. Or maybe I just thought I did. Over time, that sparkle turned into something colder. Her laughs got shorter, her smiles tighter. Where there used to be warmth, there was calculation. I blamed the stress. My father, Richard Carlisle, the patriarch, the founder, the man who never missed a day at work until cancer punched a hole through his gut, had been in and out of the hospital for months. Every family dinner felt like a board meeting. Every phone call could be the last. Sarah started asking questions, innocent ones at first. "So, your dad hasn't updated his will, has he?" I blinked. "Not that I know of." "Why?" She shrugged. "Just wondering. I mean, with everything going on. Wouldn't want things to get messy later." Later she got bolder. "You're sure he's leaving it all to you, right? I mean, you've practically run the company for years." "It's not about the money," I'd said, but the way her eyes narrowed told me that for her, it might have been. I tried to ignore it, to chalk it up to nerves, anxiety, whatever people said, to avoid confronting the obvious. But the obvious had teeth, and they were sinking in. She started coming home late, said she was grabbing drinks with Mandy, a friend I'd never met and apparently never would. She started leaving her phone face down, smiling at texts she didn't show me. Once I woke up in the middle of the night and found her sitting in the kitchen, staring out the window with a glass of wine in her hand like she was waiting for something. Or, "Couldn't sleep," she said, not looking at me. Neither could I after that. Still, I said nothing, because silence is easier than suspicion, and suspicion, when you finally face it, tends to ruin everything. Derek Carlisle had always been the kind of man people gravitated toward. He had an easy charm, a grin that could sell anything to anyone, and the type of confidence that made you want to believe him, even when you shouldn't. I hadn't seen him in over a year when he called me out of nowhere. "Mike, been too long, man. We need to catch up." That was it, no preamble, no acknowledgement of the fact that he'd been MIA while Dad was in and out of hospitals. Typical Derek. "When did you get back in town?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "Yesterday. Needed to be closer to family, you know? Thought it was time." "Time for what?" I wanted to ask, but I didn't, because I already knew Derek never did anything without a reason. When I told Sarah later that evening, she practically lit up. "We should have him over for dinner," she said, already pulling out her phone. I frowned. "You haven't even seen him yet." "Exactly. It's been ages. He's your brother, Mike. You should be happy he's back." Her enthusiasm didn't sit right with me, not because I thought anything of it yet, but because I knew Sarah. She wasn't the type to get excited about family reunions. We met at a quiet Italian place downtown, Sarah's suggestion. Low lighting, candles on the tables, the kind of place where couples leaned in close and talked in hushed tones. Derek was already at the bar when we arrived, a whiskey in hand, looking effortlessly at home. He spotted Sarah first. "Well, damn," he said, sliding off the stool with that easy grin of his. "You look incredible, Sarah. Mike, how the hell did you manage to lock this one down?" Sarah laughed, touching my arm briefly before stepping forward to hug him. I shook his hand. His grip was just as firm as I remembered, but there was something in his eyes, something sharp, measuring. We took a table near the back. Dinner started fine. Small talk, catching up. Derek told stories about his latest business ventures, which sounded suspiciously like thinly veiled scams. Sarah hung on his every word. She laughed at his jokes, too much, leaned in when he talked. When she reached for the wine bottle to top off his glass, her fingers brushed against his shoulder, lingering just a second too long. I saw it, and so did Derek. His eyes flicked to mine, watching for a reaction. I didn't give him one, but something cold curled in my stomach. When we got home, Sarah was practically glowing. "That was fun, wasn't it?" she said, kicking off her heels. "Yeah," I said flatly. She didn't seem to notice. A little later, as I was brushing my teeth, she leaned in the doorway of the bathroom. "Mandy invited me over for wine. I think I'll go." She shrugged. She had a rough day. "Won't be long." I met her gaze in the mirror. "Okay," she smiled, kissed my cheek, left. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time after that. At some point I laid down, but I didn't sleep. Not really, because something in my bones told me I wasn't alone in losing Sarah. I just hadn't admitted it yet. It started with a vibration, a subtle buzz on the kitchen counter as Sarah's phone lit up while she was in the shower. I wasn't snooping, not really. But when your marriage is slowly freezing over and your wife's been spending more nights with Mandy than at home, your instincts sharpen. The screen lit up again, and I didn't mean to read it. I really didn't. "Last night was incredible. Still smells like you. No name, just a number, but I didn't need a name." I stood there for a while, holding my breath, the sound of water running above my head. I could see her laughing, hair tangled in the sheets, him leaning over her, whispering things I didn't want to imagine, but couldn't stop myself from seeing. I didn't confront her, not yet. Instead, I waited. The next few days I became someone I didn't recognize. I noted when she left, when she came home, tracked her vague stories, yoga class, wine with friends, late shifts that never made sense. Once, I followed her. She wasn't headed to Mandy's, she wasn't anywhere near yoga. She was parked outside a condo complex downtown, and Derek stepped out the door. Wearing sweatpants, holding her coffee, she beamed. She kissed him, right there, in broad daylight, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I didn't confront them. I didn't scream or drive off or demand answers. I just sat in my car, engine running, watching the two people I loved most destroy the little dignity I had left. Then I drove home. That night, she walked through the front door like nothing happened, tossed her keys in the bowl, slid off her jacket, smelled like him. I was waiting in the kitchen, lights off, just one above the stove. "Michael," she said, a little startled, "why are you sitting in the dark?" I looked at her, and I asked calmly, more calmly than I thought possible, "Are you sleeping with my brother?" She froze, didn't lie, didn't deny it. She looked down at her feet and something in her just crumbled. "I didn't mean for it to happen like this," she whispered. "I didn't plan it, but it's real, Mike. We're in love, and I owe you the truth." I didn't say a word. She waited, for yelling, for accusations, for some kind of reaction. There wasn't one. She walked upstairs, came down 10 minutes later with a duffel bag. No suitcase, no effort to explain. Didn't even take all her clothes. "Goodbye, Mike." The door clicked shut. That night I ended up at O'Malley's, a little dive on 9th and Harper. No one there knew me. No one asked questions. I drank until my chest stopped burning and my head got heavy enough to ignore the voice that kept screaming inside me, "They betrayed you. Together, in your own house." At some point, I laughed, actually laughed, because it was so cliché it could have been a bad soap opera. My brother, my wife, a bed that wasn't mine. And me? Just the quiet man in the corner of a bar, realizing that everything he thought was solid had already turned to ash. My father died on a Tuesday. It wasn't dramatic. No final gasps or poetic sunsets, just the soft rhythm of machines slowing down until they stopped. The room fell quiet, sterile and still, like time itself had held its breath and then let go. I was the only one there. He'd asked for me. He looked small in that hospital bed, smaller than I ever thought the man who once ran a business empire and a household with the same iron backbone could ever be. His hand was cool in mine, paper thin and fragile. "Michael," he whispered, "you were always the one who kept your word. When others played games, you stood steady." He didn't say names. He didn't have to. I nodded, couldn't speak. My throat was locked with something heavier than grief. "You're my choice," he said. Those were his last words. The memorial was held in my father's home, our home, once. The same house where Derek and I played baseball in the yard, where Sarah and I had toasted our engagement over a bottle of cheap red wine and homemade pasta. Now it was full of hushed voices and the rustle of black fabric. Everyone dressed like they were part of a funeral catalog. Then they walked in, Derek and Sarah, together, hand in hand. I felt a dozen heads turn, whispered glances, shocked gasps hidden behind polite coughs. She wore black, of course, hair perfectly curled, makeup like a magazine ad, morning chic. He looked smug. They walked straight toward me. She gave a nervous smile. "Michael," she began, voice soft. I turned my head. Didn't answer. Didn't blink. Didn't give her the dignity of recognition. She stood there a second too long, then let Derek pull her toward the back of the room. I didn't see her again until the reading of the will. It was the same office where my father had signed contracts, lectured board members, and once told me that a handshake means more than a signature if you're a man of your word. Now it smelled like old paper and coffee. The lawyer, Mr. Daniels, was a gray-haired hawk in suspenders, with a voice like gravel and zero patience for theatrics. We were all seated, me, Derek, Sarah beside him, like an eager contestant on a reality show finale. Daniels opened the envelope. To my son Michael, he read, "I leave the entirety of my estate, including all holdings, accounts, properties, and the family business." Sarah's jaw twitched. To my son Derek, he paused, cleared his throat. "I leave nothing." Then Daniels continued, "Reason, lack of character, repeated displays of disloyalty, and failure to uphold the values this family stands on." Derek stood. "What the hell is this?" Daniels didn't even flinch. Exactly what it sounds like. He can't do this. I assure you he could, and he did. Now, unless you're here as moral support for the grieving widow you helped create, you're free to leave. Derek looked at Sarah, like he expected her to say something, to defend him. She didn't. She was pale, staring at the carpet, like she was trying to sink into it. I didn't gloat, didn't smirk, didn't say, "I told you so." But something shifted inside me. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt a quiet I didn't know I needed. Not peace, not yet, but silence, and that was enough for now. A week passed before I heard from her again. I was in the office finalizing quarterly reports when my phone buzzed. A name I hadn't seen on my screen since the will reading. "Sarah, just one line. Can we talk?" No punctuation, no emotion. Just a quiet request, like a knock on a door she once had the keys to. I stared at it for a long time. Then I replied, 3 p.m., cafe on Main. She arrived early. I spotted her through the window sitting at a corner table. A perfect picture of curated vulnerability, soft curls, neutral tones, delicate earrings, hands wrapped around a mug like it held something sacred. When I walked in, she looked up fast, eyes wide, too wide, the kind of eyes that had practiced sorrow in front of a mirror. "Michael," she said, standing halfway, then sitting back down when I didn't move to greet her. I took the seat across from her, calm, composed, watching her the way a man watches a movie he's already seen the ending of. I didn't know if you'd come," she said. "You asked," I replied simply. She gave a tight smile. I deserved worse. I said nothing. "I was scared," she began. "When your dad got sick, and then Derek came back, I thought maybe he'd be the one chosen. He told me things, promised me things. I let myself believe it." She looked away. blinked fast. I wasn't thinking clearly. I was just trying to feel safe. I didn't mean to hurt you. Not really. She looked at me again, voice cracking now, lower, more real. I miss you, every day. You were my home. I thought I wanted something else, but it all fell apart so fast. A tear slipped down her cheek. She reached for my hand. I didn't pull away. I want to try again, she whispered. I made a mistake. I looked at her for a long time. She was still beautiful. Still knew how to tilt her head just slightly, how to tremble on cue, how to make pain look poetic. But regret had changed her, and more importantly, it hadn't changed me. I pulled my hand back gently. You didn't lose me, Sarah, I said, my voice steady. You traded me for a lie that felt shinier in the moment. She flinched. I didn't leave. You did. And now that you see the cost, you want a refund. That's not how this works. I stood up, reached for my wallet, placed a few bills on the table. Coffee's on me. Then I turned and walked out, letting the door close softly behind me. Through the glass, I saw her sit there, alone, hands still around the mug, eyes wet. Regret has a face. And that day, it wore her name. It arrived slowly, like morning light creeping through blinds, soft and certain. After everything, I threw myself into work, not as an escape, but as a reclamation. This company had always carried my family's name, but for the first time I was shaping its future, my future. We restructured, modernized. I brought in fresh talent, younger minds with bold ideas. Departments that had collected dust for decades were now humming with energy. There was movement again, purpose. I started running in the mornings. At first it was just to clear my head, but it became something more, a ritual, a return to self. Weights in the gym, journals at night, silence in the spaces where pain used to echo. Sarah wrote, long letters, short ones, some typed, some handwritten. They arrived every few days, stuffed with apologies, memories, questions she wished she'd asked earlier. My assistant, Claire, always intercepted them with professional grace. She's waiting downstairs, Claire would say now and then, never pushing, just stating. I'd nod, and Claire would return with a quiet, he's unavailable. She got the message eventually, but some messages don't land until life finishes what betrayal began. Derek didn't last. He'd never been built for consequence. When my father's will left him nothing, he unraveled quickly, burning bridges, draining accounts, making promises he couldn't keep. Word got around that he skipped town, leaving Sarah with unpaid debts, lease notices, and a sour reputation in circles that once welcomed her smile. She was never meant for survival, only strategy, and without a partner in the game, strategy means nothing. I saw her once. It was raining lightly. I was walking back from lunch, portfolio in hand, when I spotted her across the street. Hair pulled back, jacket too thin for the weather, grocery bags biting into her fingers. She was rushing toward a bus stop, heels slipping on the pavement. She looked smaller, not just physically, but in energy, in spirit, like someone who had finally run out of performances to give. Our eyes met briefly. I didn't stop. I didn't slow, just walked past like she was any other person in the city with burdens I no longer carried. That evening, I returned to my new place, not bigger than the old house, but brighter. Open windows, warm wood floors, a record player in the corner spinning old jazz. I made dinner, poured a glass of wine. Later that week, I gave a talk at the local entrepreneurship center. Young minds eager to create something real in a world obsessed with shortcuts. When someone asked, "What's the most important thing you've learned?" I paused, then smiled. Trust is worth more than love, and dignity. Dignity will feed you long after love walks out the door. They clapped. But I wasn't performing. I was living. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. The gala event was everything I expected, refined, elegant, and effortless. I'd become used to these kinds of nights, tuxedo-clad men, women in dazzling gowns, wine flowing freely. But tonight, something felt different. I wasn't just a guest. Tonight, I was acknowledged. I stood on the stage, the bright lights warming my face, the applause ringing in my ears. The organization was a cause close to my heart, a foundation for young entrepreneurs, a place where people could be nurtured, supported. It wasn't just about business. It was about giving people the tools to make something of themselves. to fight for their future when the world around them seemed determined to shut them down. And I had given everything to it. I received the award with a steady hand, grateful but composed, the room full of familiar faces cheering for my contribution. I had made it to a place I never thought I'd reach, but I wasn't there for applause. I was there for the people, for those who had no voice yet, for those who believed in themselves the way I did once. After the formalities, a reporter stepped forward with a microphone. She was young, eager, holding the kind of curiosity that felt like an old friend to me. She smiled warmly before asking, "Mr. Carlyle, after everything, what does victory mean to you?" The room grew silent for a moment. It felt like the universe paused, just for me. Her words hung in the air like a challenge, like a test I hadn't studied for. I took a breath, then spoke. "It's not about revenge," I said, my voice carrying across the room. "Victory isn't about winning at someone else's expense. It's about being able to stand in front of people and still be myself, still be whole, even after everything, even after being betrayed." The room was still for a moment before the quiet hum of conversations resumed. But something shifted in me, something that felt like the weight of the past year lifting just a little bit more. As the interview wrapped up, I stepped down from the stage, smiling at the people who approached to congratulate me. My eyes swept across the room, over the glittering crowd of high-profile donors and dignitaries. The air was filled with laughter, the soft clinking of glasses, the hum of polite conversation. And then my gaze stopped. At the far end of the room, there she was, Sarah. She was in the background, her hands carefully balancing a tray of drinks, her smile a little too bright. She was serving guests, serving them with that same polite grace that had once charmed me, once made her feel like a part of my life, a part of my world. But tonight, the world had shifted. Our eyes met across the room. For a split second, time seemed to pause again. Her gaze dropped immediately. She didn't smile, didn't try to wave or make any gesture. She simply looked down, like she had done something wrong, like she knew the consequences of her actions would follow her forever. And I turned to face the next person, offering them my best smile. No more need for words, no more need for confrontation. The truth was clear in that single glance. I had won, but not in the way she'd expected, not in the way anyone could have predicted. I spent the rest of the evening surrounded by friends, colleagues, people who mattered, people who valued me for who I was, for what I had achieved, not for the legacy of a family name or the idea of what I could offer. And I realized something as I stood there at the event, chatting with guests and feeling a sense of peace I hadn't thought possible. The victory wasn't in the award. It wasn't in the recognition. The victory was in the quiet moments, in the slow, deliberate path I'd taken to rebuild myself, in the realization that I had chosen to let go of the anger, the resentment, the need for revenge. It had never been about winning over her or Derek or anyone else. It had always been about winning back myself, and I had done it. The house was quiet now, the kind of quiet that filled the space not with emptiness, but with peace. The minimalist decor of the living room, the sparse furniture, the clean surfaces, they all reflected something I had worked hard to build in my own life. Order, simplicity. I had let go of so much, and now what remained felt like enough. I sat at the kitchen table, a cup of coffee in front of me, steam rising lazily into the air. The sun was setting outside the window, casting long shadows across the room. The warmth of the fading light softened the hard edges of the day. It was a time for reflection, for quiet moments. The kind of moments I hadn't allowed myself to have until now. I picked up my notebook from the table, opened it, and began writing. It wasn't for anyone else. Just thoughts, just the mess of things that swirled around in my head when the world outside went still. She thought I was the way to something, I wrote slowly. A path to a future, a step on her journey. But in the end, I was the finish line. I paused. The ink dried on the page as I looked out the window, watching the last of the sunlight fade into the horizon. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel regret, just a quiet acceptance that this was where my journey had led me. I closed the notebook and put it aside. There was nothing left to say. The past had been written, the chapters finished. And now, there was nothing left but to move forward. She had made her choice. She had chosen a path that seemed right for her, even though it was built on lies and empty promises. She had thought I was a stepping stone, a means to an end, But in the end, I wasn't the bridge she'd hoped for. I stood up from the table and walked over to the window, looking out at the fading sky. The house felt different now. It felt like mine. It felt like I had built it, not just with bricks and mortar, but with the strength I had found within myself. And as I looked at the horizon, I smiled faintly to myself. I had let go of everything that had once tied me down. She made her bed, I murmured quietly, more to myself than to anyone else. I just refused to play along.